Have you ever wanted to play Airsoft but just don't know where to start? This guide has got you covered. What is up guys, it's Jordan and welcome to this new mini-series I'm going to be hosting. This mini-series is going to consist of 5 different episodes which are 100% going to set you up to start playing Airsoft the right way. In this series I'm going to be teaching you about budgeting, good equipment, rules and safety, and all the other things you need to get into Airsoft the right way. And to not make the same mistakes I did when I started playing Airsoft. Alright, let's get into it. In episode 1, we're gonna talk about budgeting and buying your very first Airsoft replica. But before we do that, let me give you some critical advice. Don't go out and drop hundreds of dollars on your Airsoft replica when you haven't even played Airsoft in the first place. Make sure you go to a local field and play with some rental kits before you buy anything. A rental kit will set you back about $40 to $60, but will save you hundreds if you decide that Airsoft is just not for you. Also, try playing a few different games with some different Airsoft replicas. This way you'll get to know the replicas and get to know what you really like. So when you finally buy your first replica, you'll exactly know what you want. Alright, let's say you've played a few games and you've actually had a blast. Now you're ready to buy your very first Airsoft replica. So, where do you start? The first thing you need to think about is to set a budget. I wish I had done this when I first started because I ended up spending way too much on tactical gear and things like that and spending way too less on my actual replica, which meant I had to spend a lot more money upgrading and fixing my first replica. This is not something you want to do when you're just starting out. You just want to play games with your favorite replica and not think about it too much. I would say the minimum budget to starting Airsoft right is about $400 to $500. This will get you the bare minimum you'll need to get a good experience. But a recommended budget would be $700 and above so you can get a really nice kit. How would you distribute this budget? Well, I would say use the 70-30 rule. Spend 70% on your replica and 30% on tactical gear. This budget will get you a reliable primary replica and it will also leave some budget for some essential gear like boots, clothing, and maybe a chest rig or a plate carrier. Now, I want to point something out. If you've played some games with a rental kit, did you have a sidearm? And if you did, then how much did you actually use it? What I found is I didn't actually use my sidearm that much and I would have been way better off spending like $150 or $200 more on my primary replica than I would have done on getting a pistol. Now, if you have a little bit of a bigger budget, I would say about $800 plus, you could get a sidearm if you really wanted to. Then I would use the budget of 50, 30, 20. So 50% on your primary, 30% on your secondary, and 20% on tactical gear. But something I want to say is only go this route if you really want a sidearm. If you have the bigger budget and you don't really want to get a sidearm, I would say spend even more money on your primary replica because the more money you spend, the better it gets. Alright, now that you have a budget in mind, let's look at some of the replica options. You might have already searched some Airsoft web shops or things like that, and you could probably see that there are a lot of options available. So let's break them down into 4 different types. Number 1 is spring replicas. Spring replicas are mostly seen in sniper rifles and shotguns, but they're not really the replica for beginners. Of course, with a spring replica, you'll need to cock back the spring every time you want to fire. This feature alone makes them way harder to play with than something that can automatically fire. So I would not recommend this type of replica for beginners. I know there are some spring-powered assault rifles available, but those just suck and you don't even need to think about those. Alright, the second type of replica is GBB, or gas blowback. These are mostly found in sidearms, and while they're the most realistic type of replica, I would not recommend them for beginners as they take a lot more maintenance than some of the other options. There are also GBB assault rifles available, but I would not recommend them as, like I said, they take a lot more maintenance, their mags are really expensive, and mostly the mags will have a lot less capacity than just a AEG mag, which I'm gonna get into a little bit later. Now, the third type is HPA, or high pressure air systems. These are the creme de la creme of Airsoft, but that comes with one drawback. These things are very expensive. They work like paintball guns with airsoft tanks in the stock or on your back connected with a hose. Now, these types of replicas are really nice because they allow for a fast trigger response, a long range and great accuracy. But of course, that all comes with a cost. A quality HPA system will set you back at least $1,500 and most of the times over $2,000 to $2,500. So I would not recommend starting out with them. Alright, the fourth and final type is AEG, or Airsoft Electric Guns. Now these are what you want as a beginner. They are relatively budget friendly, easy to maintain, and they just do the job. They work with LiPo batteries and an electric motor that pushes a piston forward, creating an air pocket that fires off the round. Now, like I said, these are easy to maintain, budget friendly, and these are just the type of replica you want to go with when you're just starting out. Of course, when starting out, the choice is yours, but I would say go with an AEG. Alright, now that we've chosen what type of replica we want to choose the platform. Now, although it can be tempting to go with like a PPSH, FAMAS, or even a Mark 46, I would not recommend doing so. Now, what I would recommend is going with an M4 or AK type of replica, just because they are most common and widely used in Airsoft. Also, they provide the most spare parts and upgrades, and they will also, of course, give you the best bang for your buck. So go with an M4 or an AK. As for brands, I would say go with the Crytek for a high-end and very durable replica. Go with the G&G armament replica if you want to go for the best bang for your buck. So really budget-friendly prices, but also great durability. The third option is ICS Airsoft, which makes really nice replicas which are very easy to maintain. So make sure to choose wisely. Alright, now that you've chosen your replica, let's look at some essential items you're gonna need to play Airsoft. First one is BBs. Make sure to always go with quality BBs, as some lower quality BBs or cheap ones can damage your Airsoft replica, and that's just not what you want. If you're going with a little bit of a more budget-friendly Airsoft gun and you actually play a lot indoors and things like that, 0.2 gram BBs will just be fine. If you're getting a little bit of a more higher end replica and are playing a lot outside maybe, where you need a little bit more range, I would say go for a 0.25, 0.28 or even a 0.30 gram, which will give you a lot more range, straighter flights, and will be just nicer. Make sure to check your field rules to know what are the maximum BB weights, and make sure to check the rules if you need biodegradable BBs or just normal ones. Biodegradable ones will be allowed everywhere and will be a little more expensive than just normal plastic ones, but you'll be able to play anywhere you want, especially in like the Netherlands or Belgium where I play. Bio BBs are always mandatory, so make sure to check that with your local field. Alright, the next thing is, for AEG replicas at least, a battery and a charger. Most replicas come with or without a LiPo battery, and mostly they come without a charger. So make sure to get a high quality LiPo battery. I would say go for 1000 milliamp hours to maybe 3000, that will be the max. Make sure it fits in your replica, and make sure it's 7.4 volts or 11.1. Don't go below or higher because they will break your replica. As for chargers, go with a smart charger that can charge and discharge your batteries to make sure they are long lasting and will never fail you. Alright, the next essential item is some extra magazines. Most replicas come with either 1 or 2 mid-cap magazines, which will hold about 100 to 150 rounds, which might sound like a lot, but especially when you're starting out, you're gonna need to fire a lot, so I would recommend getting some extra magazines. PTS makes some really high quality ones, but they're a bit more expensive. If you don't want to spend that much money on your magazines, then just go with the brand your replica came from, as the magazines will be the same as they were delivered with that, and they will mostly be a little bit cheaper than some higher quality ones. Some replicas come with a cleaning rod, but if they don't, I would definitely recommend getting one, as sometimes BBs can get stuck in your barrel or things like that, and you'll need to clean it out. Also get some lubricant, because you might need to lube up your replica from time to time, and it's just handy to have already. How to maintain your replica I will explain in the coming episodes, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Now the last thing to get is of course eye and face protection. Of course, some good quality eye and face protection are essential when you're playing Airsoft, because they're mandatory on most fields. Especially the eye protection is almost always mandatory. So make sure to get a good quality pair, and if you can't decide which one yet, then stay tuned for episode 2, because we'll explain there. Alright guys, that wraps up episode 1 of the Ultimate Beginner series. Now you know how to set a budget, choose your first replica, and grab all the essentials you need to get started in Airsoft the right way. In the next episode, we're going to be talking about rules and safety and making sure you know everything you need to know before stepping onto the airsoft field. So make sure to stay tuned for that. Alright, if you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace!